Testing. Can you hear me? Yeah, is it coming through? Okay, good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to get us started here. It is like 5:31, 5:32. We'll probably have more people come in. And Nina, you're welcome to keep that door open as we get started. My name is Pastor Paul Carlson. I'm a pastor here along with my wife, Pastor Lauren, at Calvary Lutheran. It is a great honor to have you all here. We are hosting the Burke Coalition for Reconciliation's February meeting. And we are also streaming this live on our congregation's website right now. We will put it up on our YouTube page as well. And we're doing this for a number of reasons, but mostly so that we can continue to reach out, build relationships, and share some of these stories that we are going to hopefully put together and connect and create oral history tonight. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Many of you have asked me, what is the Burke Coalition for Reconciliation? I am not actually a leader in that group. It is a phenomenal group of great leaders. We have 4 leaders. Alan Fullwood, who's here tonight. Will you raise your hand, Alan? Thank you. And also Molly Himstreet, I saw you back there. Yep. Caroline Avery is not able to be here tonight, but she is a leader, and so is George Logan. Pastor George, thank you. Thank you for coming here and allowing us to host you all. You've been doing phenomenal work over this past year, and it is something that now that our community is being invited to be engaged in and partake in, and even take greater steps here as we move forward in the work of racial justice. One group I am part of is Burke Equity, and that is a second community group that is doing more work along the lines of education and raising awareness. Some of the things that Burke Equity has done in the past couple years is the Symbols of the South Symposium. Maybe some of you were able to participate in that. It was done it was very good, over at Western Piedmont Community College with some phenomenal speakers there. The Burke Equity Group also led a book group for community leaders here in Morganton. I was invited to participate in that, and that was a book group that was about on the book The Color of Compromise by Jemar Tisby. Jemar Tisby is a really great author who has inspired me and many others, and I have quite a few of his books over here. The Color of Compromise was a challenging book and really made me do some self-reflection and made me move forward and make a commitment to doing the work of racial justice. The subtitle of this book is The Truth About the American Church's Complicity in Racism. A few months ago, Pastor George Logan did a great kind of synopsis of this book at the Burke Coalition meeting. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was in the summer. But it was a very good group to be a part of, with many faith leaders and also other leaders in the community. And we were able to build relationships and, again, continue to tell the story and do the work of racial justice. Jemar Tisby has written a second book, and it's How to Fight Racism. And that was he wrote this book because the number one question he received whenever he did talks or whenever anyone asked him about racism was how to fight it. And it's full of great practical methods, and within it there is a model to fight racism called the Arc of Racial Justice. It is taken from Dr. Martin Luther King's famous quote called "The arc of that goes like this: the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And so he took the arc, and Jemar Tisby did, and turned it into an acronym. So A is for awareness, R is for relationships, C is for commitment. And he has 3 big sections in this book. that fill it full of practical ways to fight racism. And a lot of what we're doing tonight is straight from this book and following the ARC model. Think about what Burke Equity and Burke Coalition for Reconciliation has done over the past couple years, and you can see that raising awareness on the need for racial justice and to fight racism and to stand up to white supremacy has been hugely important. That was a big part of my growth in this work for justice. Awareness is a great first step. A second step is to build relationships, to have the courage to step out and talk to someone and get to know the members of your community who are doing this work as well. And actually, I would say you can't really do the work of fighting racism without relationships because it can be very exhausting, and it's in the relationships that you are encouraged and you have someone to stand by your side. And commitment. Commitment is where you sort of you step out and you start doing the actual work of not, I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on that right now, but commitment is kind of like actually being filled with the courage that comes with the awareness, the relationships that you have, and then you realize you have to do something. You have to say something. It's been too long, and now is the time. And commitment is where it really things begin to move and change, and you, yourself, and your community begins to grow, and racism begins to shrink back, and white supremacy flees. When there is a group of people that are committed to this racial justice model of who are aware, who have strong relationships, and are committed to fight no matter what, white supremacy flees. I'm sorry, I'm breathing so heavily into the mic. I want to share a little bit more about all of this. Burke Equity is doing some very exciting things, and along with Burke Coalition for Reconciliation. I really want you all to be aware of these two groups and all the faith communities in this area that are making commitments to racial justice. Because in the coming year, Calvary Lutheran is honored to be the first church to sponsor and to host the Burke Coalition for Reconciliation. Next month, there will be another congregation, and the following month, hopefully another congregation, and month after that as well. Last year, there's been some really good speakers at the county commissioners, and it's time to show the county commissioners that there are many communities that are serious about removing the Confederate monument from the courthouse square. And so Calvary Lutheran is stepping forward. We have 7 members from this congregation, our council president as well, who is going to step forward and make a comment on that topic. And we're looking forward to the other faith communities, the other congregations to do so as well in the coming months. Burke Equity is also, we're filming this because Burke Equity is working on another awareness piece, and in the work of putting together a documentary film in the coming year, we hope, that is where we hope to also build relationships with you all, and that here, starting tonight and in past county commissioner meetings where stories have already been filmed, taking those stories and sharing them in a documentary film focused on Burke County and the symbols of the South and the different stories that there are to share about how those affect our community and how we are, as a community, fighting racism and white supremacy and that myth of the lost cause narrative. So, those groups are happening now, and I look out here in this congregation, and I see all your faces, and many of which I didn't really know very well before this last year. And before this work, I started working with you all. And it has been invigorating for me and my call as a pastor. Those relationships that we have, that we make here in these groups, and then the commitment that we make together is empowering. And it is meaningful work. And it's hugely important to my life and my sense of call as a pastor, and I hope it is to you in your life and in your vocation for whatever you do. For an entire year, we have been meeting monthly with the county commissioners to build awareness of the need to remove the Confederate statue. In that time, we have made many relationships with the county, city, communities far and wide, from Asheville, Greensboro, Salisbury, groups like Burke Equity, as well as schools like App State, Western Piedmont, and our local faith community, just to name a few. Commitments to continue the difficult work of racial justice continues to grow from all of these relationships and newfound awarenesses. Tonight is proof of that fruitful work of the ARC model, a sample of just what is a foretaste for what's to come. Now, let's put the ARC model to practice tonight. Racial justice requires removing monuments that honor racist individuals and white supremacy. These monuments purposefully celebrate a fictional, sanitized Confederacy, ignoring the death, ignoring the enslavement, and the terror that it actually stood for. Monuments and symbols are about memory, how we choose to remember the past. They are about who gets included and who gets left out of our narratives. A minimum requirement for racial justice or for racial progress is to remove the statues and symbols of racism and to replace them with stories and memories of those who fought for the dignity and equality of all people. That comes straight from Jamar Tisby's book, How to Fight Racism. And when I read through that, I just got fired up, ready to do this work with you all. I think it spoke directly to our situation here and throughout our nation. Tonight, we can begin removing the monument from our county's story by telling the story of racial justice here. Tonight, by refusing to ignore the memory of those who fought for the dignity and equality of all people, we can begin to build a new monument for our community. A monument here started with the personal stories of our lives. And to get those stories flowing, I found great inspiration also through the story of John Lewis. This is a graphic novel of his biography and called March, and there are 3 books in it. And in these graphic novels, there are many stories that he shares that are connected to our own community. I am going to pass out some of these, the hard copy books, because it'll be hard for you all to actually read from the screen. And if I can get some help to do that, I'd really appreciate it. I want to try to put my mask on while I juggle all these books. Let's see here. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, go ahead and pass these out. I don't have too many of those. I'm sorry. If you maybe like one for each pew and just kind of like gather around, or people who, if you want to come closer and see the screen, that would really help as well. So in July of before he became a respected congressman, John Lewis was clubbed, gassed, and arrested over 40 times, and nearly killed by angry mobs and state police, all while non-violently protesting racial discrimination. He marched side by side with Martin Luther King as the youngest leader in the civil rights movement that would change a nation forever. And that's sort of a quick synopsis of what this book is about. And I'm choosing a few pages out of this book to share with you all tonight, so that we can kind of maybe recall some of the stories. Some of you perhaps lived through the civil rights movement, although I'll get to that here in a second. And but maybe you participated in the past couple years with some other protests for racial justice. I am humbled by John Lewis's work with the Tennessee student movement and his work with the nonviolent movement. It is this to me is a great model of the ARC model of awareness and the relationships that he builds, and the awareness of the need for racial justice, the need to march, and the need to protest nonviolently, and the commitment to do so is hugely humbling. So I'm going to come over here. Good luck, Pastor Lauren, with the video. It's not huge to record it all here, but Linda, if you could maybe scoot over towards the TV, and then she could probably get you in frame better. There we go. All right, if you all turn to page 81, if you have the book in front of you, I'm going to kind of read through some of these panels, and to read through them, it's not like a book. So if you look at the screen, and you'll see what I'm seeing by my little mouse here circling over some things. But this is John Lewis and his group practicing nonviolence. They're together in a room, and it starts out with this commitment they're making towards each other, and some of them just simply can't do it. As he says here at the top of page 81, sometimes I couldn't help but smile, even laugh when someone played such an unnatural role. But sometimes it was one of your friends calling you names, knocking you down, spitting on you. You okay, Charles? And then Charles responds, I don't think I can do it. I just can't. Maybe I can bring signs or make them. Maybe I can drive people to the site, but I can't take it. I can't be nonviolent. I cannot. For some, John Lewis said, it was too much. But we needed to see how each of us would react under stress. And here, now it's a very dark picture, it's hard to see, but they continue to practice this nonviolence. Lawson taught us how to protect ourselves, how to disarm our attackers by connecting with their humanity. Maintain eye contact, John, he would say. How to protect each other, how to survive. But the hardest part to learn, to truly understand deep in your heart, was how to find love for your attacker. Do not let them shake your faith in nonviolence. Love them. And we took a name, the Nashville Student Movement. Because of our distrust of centralized power, we insisted on a rotating leadership. We were all together in this, and we were ready to act. And so their first bit of action was in a diner. The segregation at the downtown stores bothered us the most. We could shop there and pay the same prices as white customers, but we couldn't use the dressing rooms or sit at the lunch counter to eat. It was humiliating. So we decided the department store lunch counters would be our first target. And November 28th, 1959, we started with the test sit-ins to test the local stores' policies, establishing that they would not serve an interracial or all-black group. Our plan was simple. Enter a store, ask to be served, and if or when we were refused, we would leave. I was nervous. We were all nervous. We each purchased something establishing us as legitimate paying customers and then sat down at the lunch counter for a bite to eat. Oh, one over there. We're over here now. And you can see them sitting there at the lunch counter, and the waitress came to them and said, I'm sorry, we can't serve you here. And they asked, may we speak to the manager? And part of our discipline was that only one person spoke for the group in action on this day, and they designated Diane. So Diane spoke, may we speak to the manager? The manager comes out. The manager seems to be the cook. I'm the manager. Look, it's the store policy not to serve colored people here. What about the white students? Can they be served? No, I'm sorry, they're with you, so we can't serve them either. And they say, thank you, no harsh words, no violence. No one even paid attention as we left. But when news of the student-led campaign spread, words of encouragement and support flowed in from around the country. We decided to stage our second test sit-in the following Saturday on December 5th. And again, there's kind of a hold up, and they wish to speak to the manager. I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly. And they were turned away again and said thank you, and they left without incident. But in January, following the winter break from our school, our weekly workshop members swelled. We were close to ready through no specific date, but had yet been set for our first sit-in As fate or the spirit of history would have it, someone else made the move for us. On Monday, February 1st, 1960, in Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 freshmen from North Carolina A&T took seats at the downtown Woolworth's lunch counter. One of them had read the FOR comic about Dr. King in Montgomery, which got them talking about nonviolent action. I'm sorry, but it's against store policy to serve colored people. They heard that there as well. Whoops. Yeah, here we go. The next day, 19 students, black and white, had joined the original 4 at Woolworth's. By Wednesday, the number swelled to 85, and similar sit-ins had formed in Raleigh and Durham. A young North Carolina minister, Douglas Moore, was a friend of Jim Lawson and called to encourage us. They've been preparing. That's right. We've had 2. They're nearly ready. And on February 7th, 1 week after the Greensboro sit-ins, we began ours. The next one is the next few panels are a bunch of those, what happens in their sit-ins, and it does get violent. And you can see here that the beatings begin, and they're ripped off their stools and are called terrible names and mustard and ketchup. They're humiliated with all sorts of ways of that. But the last panel here on page 103, I thought was very powerful. Go to 103 in your book. You can hear their whole purpose. We wanted to change America, to make it something different, something better. While this way, they were being put into wagons here to go to jail, they began singing, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome." There were so many of us to arrest that as they drove us off to jail, we filled every paddy wagon the police had in Nashville, and they're singing, "We shall overcome" the whole way. February 27th, 1960 was my first arrest, the first of many. And as I said at the beginning, John Lewis was arrested over 40 times. I'm going to sneak back over here. In July of 2020, John Lewis died. Today, we are living during the final years of those who participated in the civil rights movement. Even the youngest of these participants are now in their 70s and 80s. What will happen when this last generation of eyewitnesses passes from the earth? What questions will remain unanswered? Who will inspire the next generation of racial justice activists? We cannot prolong anyone's life indefinitely, but we can honor their lives by inviting them, I just realized I had that on, by inviting them to recount and record their stories. Telling the story builds awareness, creates relationships, and inspires commitment. I want to share with you all, I know a bit of your stories, and I've invited Jean Fleming to come and share with us a little bit of her story. Jean, I believe did you march with John Lewis, is that correct? Jean, will you come forward? At this time, I'd like to continue to share more personal, local stories of folks here in our community. And Jean, I have a microphone for you too. And I'd like you to please use it. And for all those of you who will be making public comment at the county commissioners, just know it's 5:55. We have a good 20 minutes probably. Yeah. No, you take your time.
No, that's me. I'm trying to move all these things around. Sorry, people. Okay, I'll be still. Right, like this. Okay. I was curious about how long the time frame was from slavery in those years, and so I was adding up, and when I was born, that was 74 years from the Emancipation Proclamation, and 43 years from Plessy versus Ferguson, which really ended the Reconstruction, and 62 years since Reconstruction ended. And that is too close for comfort. My parents didn't ever protect me from segregation. They just let it be out there. I remember going to a carnival, and my dad took me by to see the lights, and of course I wanted to go, and he explained as best he could why I couldn't go. And I know that Condoleezza Rice was always protected from any of those experiences, and we see how she turned out. A little bit about that later. But I remember also from a young age, my father attended New York University every summer, so we would take the train and go to New York, the whole family. And my three aunties just started going. We would dress to the nines and carry our lunch in a shoebox, because you couldn't use the cafeteria on the train. So we would always look forward to crossing the Mason-Dixon line, because then you could sit anywhere. You didn't have to have a car in the back on your own, just one car that you could sit in. And then sometimes as you moved up into the other cars, if white people came in, of course, you had to move back, keep moving back. But one night, coming back from New York, my mother did a Rosa Parks. But anyway, you could move the seat over so that the seat in front of you faced you. And she had put me to sleep on that. And I was a very small child, preschool, maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 years old, I'm not sure. And what was happening was white people were coming into the car. And the conductor told her she had to move back. And that day she said, "I'm not moving. My baby's asleep over there, don't you see?" And so all that night, coming back on the train, every few minutes, it seemed, he came back. And then there was this back and forth. And arguments started. And there was a black soldier on there. And he got into it. And he said, "I've been fighting in the war overseas for this country, and this is the way we're treated." And so all that was going on all night long. And my dad was sitting not with us. He was in the other part. So the last time he came back before morning, he said, "When we get to Hickory, you're going to jail." And so just before we pulled into Hickory, my father came up and said, "Isola, it's time, move." So just before we got into Hickory, we moved. And I've heard that story all my life. What else? Otherwise, oh yeah, let me do that. I do have, and I'll save the rest of that. Okay. Anyway, when I got to college at Fisk University, I met John Lewis. We started at one of the rehearsals, I guess you'd say, with Reverend Lawson. And some people would pretend to be the sitters, and the others would be the hecklers. And we would do that, and I'll get to, but I always loved sitting in with John. He was stoic, he was a loving person, and he was very, very brave. And you can see how he looked then. If you yeah, that was at court. Mm-hmm. There's some other pictures here too. Let's see. So though the protesters were peaceful, the sit-ins themselves a lot of times became violent. And we weren't supposed to really help the other person. Well, there were things you could do, like maybe put yourself between them or a few things. But it was really hard to be there when other people were being beaten and picked on and so forth. But the day that we were arrested, I was arrested with him, was the day that they were having some negotiations in the city, and they decided that if they asked us to move, we would move that day, so we wouldn't start a big arrest situation. And so we started to this, I thought it was Walgreens, but some say it was McGrath, so I'm not really sure. So I happened to be walking in front with John, and it was a big group behind us just straggling along. And when we got to the store, we went in, and the manager ran and locked the door. So only just a few of us got in. And so we went over and sat down, and of course they started slinging things around and closing the counter and that sort of thing. Then they called the police. So the policeman came in and just grabbed us and said, put those N-word people in the paddy wagon. And they didn't ask us to leave, so we didn't get a chance to leave that particular day. And of course we were taken to jail. And I was in a cell by myself. I was the only girl. And John, I remember he was calling, Jean, are you all right? Are you all right? And I said, yes, I'm all right. And so that was that arrest. Let me see. So we were released the next morning, and of course we went to court. That picture that was going around is the court. But what happened after that was a boycott. We decided to boycott all the stores in Nashville, the department stores, even stores that did not have a lunch counter. So we went to the various churches and solicited support for the boycott, which we did receive. And the boycott went on and on. It was 98% effective. And it did bring about negotiations after a while. I won't go into this. We went to the University of Wisconsin. They sent us there, wanted us to come up and talk to the students there. And so I guess I did not see him. I hadn't seen John in a long time. I did run into him at a conference, but we've lost track. We had lost track at that time, and he said, I always wondered where you were, and I haven't seen him there. I have always followed his career. He was a very loving person, strong and a gentle soul. He always kept his eyes on the prize, and his strength was contagious. He always led in a resolved way. So I'll leave it at that. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jean. We'll have to hear more of your story here when we get a chance. Now that COVID hopefully will settle down a little bit, would love to have you together with this book and tell us more about your story and John Lewis's, but also just the work of the civil rights movement. Alan, if you have a few minutes, can you share a little bit of your work during the... Okay. Thank you. If you use a mic, though, then the people who are watching online can also hear you.
Okay, right. Can I take my mask off?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just slip my mask off. Who thought 62 years ago, in fact, it was 62 years ago last week, I was a student in Rock Hill, South Carolina, at a small junior college, Friendship Junior College, which is now closed. But as Gene was talking, I was thinking that prior to those sit-ins, there were so many other individual scenarios that occurred. I did not walk downtown that day, but I had many, many friends. There was always this buzz for about a month or so on campus. Small student body, everybody knew each other. We were very familiar with our faculty members and even the president of the school. And my music teacher, I was a member, I played football and also a member of the college choir, and we were preparing for our spring tour of the choir. And that was a rather large moneymaker for the school. We toured many churches and facilities in South Carolina, some in North Carolina, and particularly in the Virginia and Washington area. And my music professor and choir director, Professor Tally Mose, he was from Oklahoma. And he spoke to the choir members and said, I know you want to go and participate in the events that he was talking about this sit-in downtown Rock Hill. He said, but would you not? We need you with the choir for our spring tour. I had experienced, I'm probably the oldest person in here, I'm 80 years old, and soon to be 81. I had experienced segregation, Jim Crow, right here in this community. But on that day, even though I was not downtown in the days following, were probably some of the most ugliest days that I have experienced between human beings. Some of my friends who still reside in South Carolina, and one very close, and he was a member of choir, and his sister was a member of the choir, Doug and Margaret. And Doug and I speak very often about that experience. He was not going to go, but Margaret said, I am going, so he went with his sister to downtown. And the kinds of things that occurred at a lunch counter, unbelievable, unbelievable. Being spit upon, down your neck, vile language being used. A story that wasn't told, later that evening, our dorm was sort of hit with a barrage of 22 bullets. That was the first sit-in South Carolina, which South Carolina State followed shortly thereafter. And as you may recall, it was during those sit-ins that several students were killed as a result of fire, when they were fired upon by the State Highway Patrol. Gene was talking about Lewis, and I finished the spring of '61. And John Lewis was beaten there in the bus station. I was still a student. We were getting ready for commencement there in Rock Hill. I remember the commencement speaker, who was then president of Morehouse College in Atlanta. And many of our students, once they finished there, went ahead and completed their education at Morehouse. I came and went to North Carolina College at Durham, North Carolina Central University now. And it was in Durham, again, participating in the sit-ins, and I did participate then. It was just tragic. I remember the sit-in when we went to the Holiday Inn on Chapel Hill Street there in Durham. And some of the football players, these guys weighing 260 and above, being beaten with billy sticks on the steps of that Holiday Inn. I remember that very fateful, I think it was a Sunday, and we had been prepared. We had been to the home of the late Floyd McKissick, and it was there that we met with individuals who came in and talked to us about nonviolence. In fact, I was pulling a book not too long ago, and a book that was authored by the late Terry Sanford, governor of the state, and there were several photos in there. And the book that he had authored was regarding the sit-ins throughout North Carolina. And there was a photo of me and my friends. We were sitting in the chapel preparing to go for the sit-in the following day on 15501 there in Chapel Hill. I forget the name of the hotel. It was that day that I was arrested. Many of us were arrested and taken to the county jail. Some of our instructors, the Central and other citizens, I remember the hot carton of milk and the pimento cheese sandwich that they brought us. And that sort of stands out. But who would have thought, 62 years ago, I would have never thought that we would be congregating here today talking about racism, desegregation even. I was sharing with some individuals a few weeks ago that since my presentation there at the County Commissioners, I've certainly witnessed some of the subtleties of racism. And it still exists and is very strong. It doesn't always come out in terms of the flag being flown, or a statue or a monument. There are other ways, very subtle ways, that racism is expressed. I hope that in the next 62 years, there will be a gathering and we'll be celebrating the freedoms that all of us certainly deserve. Out of that Rock Hill sit-in, there were the Friendship Nine. These were some of them were my teammates, and some were my choir mates. But these were individuals who were arrested, and rather than paying the bail, they went to jail. They sent them to the chain gang. And they were just recently exonerated their records in terms of two of the individuals I knew that were on the football team with me were from Rahway, New Jersey. And initially, they had gone to Florida A&M to try to make the team there. They didn't make the team, so they came to South Carolina to play 2 years, and hopefully they'd go back to Florida A&M. About 3 years ago in Charlotte, those 9 individuals made a presentation along with the historian there, and I've met him and talked with him many times, but he's a noted historian there in Charlotte, and they made the presentation. And since then, I think 2 or 3 of them have passed. But these were, and I said to them during that presentation, I was so proud of them. They sacrificed a lot. They sacrificed a lot. Many of them were not able to further their education after that experience. And some of them went into the military. Some of them started some small businesses. But they suffered as a result of that sacrifice that they'd made from that first sit-in in South Carolina. There's a lot more that I can tell you about in terms of that era there in South Carolina and certainly in Durham. But I'll end it there because I know a more important presentation is to be made this evening to the County Commissioners. So thank you, Pastor Paul.
Alan and Jean, thank you so much for sharing your stories tonight. I know there are many more in this congregation. Please share with Nancy Van Off, who's in the back, your email if you're not on the Burke Coalition for Reconciliation email list. It's a great way to stay connected and to hear these stories, be inspired by them, and to learn to share your own story. We need to hear your story. We are about to, a few of us, there are 7 from this members of this congregation who are going to go and make a public comment at the county commissioners. I believe there might be a few more from the coalition as well. We are going to prepare to head over there. Who knows when it's going to actually begin, 6:30, 6:45, we'll see. But that is part of our commitment that we're making to this work. And I hope you all will take this time to talk with each other, I have some small group questions for you all. You're welcome to stick around in here if you're not going to the county commissioner meeting, to build relationships, share, make each other aware of each other's story, and to think about and process together what we have done today so that you can make a commitment as well to this very important work of the Holy Spirit. Let us pray, and then we'll finish up. Good and gracious God, thank you for this evening, for bringing us together, for the gift of life, and for being with us, every one of us, in the midst of this world and this beautiful creation that you have made. God, fill us with your Spirit so that we may do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with you. Bless us now with your peace as we go forward using the ARC model and make commitments to each other, sharing your love with all the world. Help us to fight racism and white supremacy, to stand up to the lies and the idolatry that is filling this world. Lord, open our eyes and our hearts to hear that you are overwhelming it with your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Those of you who are making public comments, we can meet outside on these steps here. And for those of you who want to stick around a little bit, I do have some small group questions that might be able to help you continue and build relationships. So.